of him, and Tony and Pip were acceptable. They hadn't tried to step on my toes, and I'd made sure I was polite and decent with them too. Geordie was great, and I'd revelled in what I'm not shy of calling a friendship. I thoroughly enjoyed discovering the little Roman walls behind the egg factory, running through the fields and woodland together every other day where we'd train a new skill. He'd taken to lying beside my bed to sleep until Pip and Tony had gone to bed. They'd open the door and tap my bed, and he'd hop up. He was a great dog, but I soon wanted interaction of a human nature. I missed Louise, Cap, Keel, Nigel, and Bacon Egg terribly. I also missed Scouts and wrote to my old Scout leader, thanking him for the 2 Cheshire hikes I'd done. He wrote back, telling me he'd read it out to the troop. I called Brenda a few times to arrange contact, and was told Caroline wasn't ready whilst I was seeing Wenzel. I understood that, and asked to just meet up with me then. Perhaps we could go to the cinema. I was told that I should have thought about that before I left. Work kept me busy and school. I avoided Caroline as she didn't want to see me, so I took to lying. I'd got good at it as a kid, and I got even better at it in care. I started by realising Wenzel was just another person. I hadn't felt the strong bond I expected to while I got back in touch with him, so it wasn't difficult. I put it into action. My drivers were mostly different, so I didn't know what I looked like anyway, just that I'd be outside the post office in school uniform. I waited outside the newsagents, and when he pulled up I'd head to the chemist and pull my phone out as though listening to a call. I'd turn around, walk up and down a few times, keeping my eye out. If they were still there after a couple of minutes, I'd head to the shop until they left. There I'd call Wenzel, who'd tell me to call Pip and Tony. I'd call them, I'd let it ring once and then hang up. I'd call him back to tell him they didn't answer. He'd pick me up, and I'd go and do a full day's work. Nice and easy. Stock rotation became second nature. I was set up to replace in stock with the same principles, all at the back. Before long I was cutting Swedes, bagging potatoes, taking responsibility for the warehouse, and helping with deliveries in my spare time, or helping Bob with stock take. They had a fast turnover with new delivery every day, sometimes of an afternoon too. I wasn't there long before Bob opened another shop down the road. Within a month I was carrying 2 sacks of spuds at a time on my shoulder, with double my previous speed. Slow down, they don't care about you, you're just a number, Wenzel would tell me often. I was certain he didn't like the fact that I was now doing the same, if not more than he was capable of doing. I didn't rub it in, I just loved the job and got on with it. I've always been skinny. I admit I got a kick out of some of the comments and the looks I received. I shouldn't have physically been able to do the things I was capable of doing. I had the martial arts to thank for that, as most of the lifting was in the technique. I'd gone from getting £15 here and there to getting the same as the adults at £30 a day cash in hand. I was missing a lot of skill though, and my friends even more. Wenzel had spoken to social services about the cabs not turning up. Then he spoke to Pip and Tony, who insisted they hadn't had the calls from me most of the time. On the rare occasion they did answer, I went home to them and the cab company would complain about having to send another cab which took an hour each way, so there was no point in me going anyway. Either way, the result was the same. I got a full day's work. I tried to avoid him at work. Bet you think you're strong now, don't you? He'd asked me. I ignored him. Don't worry, little Dick. One day you'll be as strong as me. It started to grate on me. I realised I didn't actually want to be like Wenzel at all. I wanted to be like Bob. I wanted my own business and to muck around with the lads. I wanted to be an inspiration and to be friendly. I wanted to be me, but I had no idea who I was. I realised I was getting to Wenzel, albeit unintentionally. He took me to one side one day. "Slow down," he said, grabbing my arm. "I'm fine," I replied, trying to walk ahead. "You're not fine. You're doing twice the work as everyone else out there, and you think they give a shit about you? They don't. You're nothing. They will just get some other mug to shift the shit for them." I knew in his way he was right, but my work speed was my choice. I wasn't doing anything that wasn't sensible or anything. It wasn't anything I couldn't manage. I hadn't tried to put his ego down. It just kind of happened. I told Geordie that I shouldn't have been able to distance myself from Wenzel so easily. I shouldn't be able to do that if he was my real dad. Besides, I still didn't know if he was my real dad. The long walks helped, but it wasn't long before I was sat there with Tony and Pip telling Wenzel I was a liar. The cabs had turned up, then Wenzel fighting my case for me. He was getting more and more agitated. I just vanished inside myself, into the car at Brenda's and then camping with Scouts. It was then that I decided I need to feel the freedom of camping again, and what an idiot I was to have left Scouts, my friends and Louise. Perhaps I'd even get back in touch with Kate. "Listen, you old bastard, he's not fucking lying," Wenzel snapped, bringing me back to reality. This wasn't good. Wenzel was pointing at me and staring at Tony, and Pip was staring back. "You should leave now," Pip said quietly. "Yeah, now you can't handle the truth, you old bitch. You think I don't know my own fucking son?" he said, scrunching his face up. He was trying not to get violent, and it was hurting him. He hated not being in control. He walked out and I followed, because I knew Pip and Tony wouldn't see it as betrayal, but he would if I didn't. I'd not heard the end of it. Outside, he said, "I'll ask you once and once only. Did you say the cab hadn't turned up when it had?" I could see his chest playing mine, trying to read my moves. I could see his body calm as he was outside, and that meant he had to make a positive impression. He was conflicted, because he had this need to seem to be like a perfect father. That meant protecting me, and I could see he just wanted to run away and say goodbye to all of us. He had a "I don't need this shit" written all over his face. But only if you knew it. If you didn't, he was just another father talking to his son, and I knew two things for certain in that moment. He didn't care about me. I was part of some bigger plan that he had. A bigger plan I'd not yet put my finger on, but he needed me for whatever it was. And secondly, I could lie to him as easily as I could lie to Brenda and Big Jim. I threw my arms out well prepared. "They weren't there. I've got friends at school. I see Caroline at school. Do you want to check my phone?" I held my orange bar phone out at arm's length, knowing that he'd have no idea how to use it, and even if he did check, I had an outgoing call log. He wouldn't know. He'd need me to trust him, and to do that, he'd have to trust me. I didn't break eye contact until he spoke, and then I was concentrating on looking hurt, because he didn't believe me. "No, it's okay. I'll call social services and we'll get you out of there," he said, pointing at Tony, who was now stood in the doorway waiting for me. "Look at me again, and I'll knock your fucking head off," Wenzel said. I went in, figuring if I went in, there was no reason for Tony to be waiting or Wenzel to stay. "You scared him," Tony said to Wenzel as I walked past. "Scared? Scared? He's not fucking scared. He's clever. He knows if I whack you, he won't get to live with me. Ask him. Ask him." They continued for about 5 minutes. I'd got bored after 2 and stuck my headphones in. "Lola, I'm not the world's most physical man, but I know what I am, and I guess I'm a man that is." Wenzel wasn't allowed near the property after that, but he still picked me up right outside out of spite. I'd stopped calling Pip and Tony at all. He just picked me up for work. I called the social services and told them the cabs were unreliable. I got back to school and they got me moved in with Wenzel. I still didn't see what he needed me for, but I knew there was something going on. Naturally, Pip and Tony had ways of their own of getting back at Wenzel, and they took me away to a caravan site they owned in Greenacres. I didn't know if it was to get back at Wenzel or to assist me for a couple of weeks, but it felt at the time like a dig at Wenzel. The truth is, I absolutely loved it there. It was beautiful. I spent most of my time on the beach. I had my own money, and of a night they had stage shows. One night a magician was on, and at the end he grabbed 3 bowling balls and juggled them, throwing them high into the air. One crashed down on his head. All my first aid training flashed by me instantly, followed by Alan's head hitting the floor simultaneously. I dropped my drink and was running down this seated crowd of people towards the stage. I'd got about 3 feet away when he sat up to a round of applause. I was the only one who'd moved. The crowd loved it. I was gutted. It wasn't funny. Pain was not funny. Accidents weren't funny, and death was not fucking funny. I walked out and headed to the beach. The air was cold and the sand was warm. I lay my back against a rock, willing my entire body to sink inside it and become swallowed by the world. For a while, I thought it had worked, as the people going past didn't appear to see me at all. I must have fallen asleep, because the next minute the sun was in my face, and I have a bitch of a headache. I got up, dusting myself off and swearing internally, because Pip and Tony must be going nuts worrying about where I'd gone. I headed in the direction of the caravan. One was killed in the caravan, so I didn't really like being inside one, simply because I felt trapped. But I didn't hate it. I was swaying from side to side with a combination of heat and my headache when 3 lads and 2 girls came into view up ahead. "That's him," one lad said. "Yeah, that's him, get the fucker," another shouted. I looked around to realise there was only me and them in sight. "It's not him," a girl squealed. I was in trouble, and I knew it. There was no way I could fight 3 of them, especially in the state I was in. I couldn't run. I had no energy. So there was only one option left. I had to scare the living shit out of them. I reached down for my fishing knife to find it wasn't there. I checked all my pockets as fast as I could, and it wasn't there. Fuck! One of the lads was now leaning over me as I frantically searched again. He was saying something about hitting on his girl, but I couldn't make it out. Then I heard, "Leave him," from the other lad, who was a fair bit smaller. I recognised the voice from somewhere. I was halfway through replying, "What the fuck, mate?" when I heard, "Hey Trace, what you doing here?" As my mate Lee came into view from school. That was lucky. My first thought was, why is Lee here? My second was relief I'd not got my arse kicked. And then it hit me. I'd reached for a knife. Would I have used it? I'd in that moment definitely have pulled it out to scare them. Well done, dickhead. You'd have stabbed your mate's friends. Maybe your mate too. Or you could have got stabbed yourself. I made a mental note to never, ever pull a knife on anyone, unless they had a weapon themselves.